saw these seemed a little bit longer, and they seemed very interesting to me. So yeah, hope you guys enjoy this different type of video. So the first story we're going to be reading is by Razvan, Radu, and the title of the story is The Mending Day. Every coastal town has a ritual it keeps from outsiders, and for Holloway Cove, that was the Mending Day. Each year, on the first frost, harbour families gathered at the seawall to mend the nets that keep the town whole. The phrase was so old that no one remembered if it had ever been meant literally. Visitors saw a charming autumn festival with lanterns, cider, and a market selling woven rope and dried fish. Locals saw something different, and they kept their children close until it ended. Mira Foss had been away from Holloway Cove for 11 years, long enough to almost believe the unease she felt as a child was just her imagination. She had returned during the week of the Mending Day only because her mother's letters had stopped, and the postmaster refused to explain why over the phone. The town seemed smaller than she remembered, and quieter in a way that had nothing to do with how many people lived there. Lanterns hung from every porch, moving even though there was no wind. At the harbour, women threaded rope through iron hoops bolted into the seawall. The hoops were old, rusted, and there were far too many for any net Mara had ever seen. Her mother's house was locked. When Mara knocked, a neighbour named Mrs. Tillery answered with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She's helping with the mending, dear. Everyone helps this time of year. Mara didn't go straight to the harbour. Instead, she went to the town hall first, a habit from her days as a reporter. She wanted to find a record before trusting a neighbour's smile. The clerk, a young man she didn't know, led her into the archive room without much trouble. Holloway Cove had never needed strict rules about who could read its history, mostly because outsiders really asked. The ledgers were older than the town's official founding date, bound in leather that had grown soft and dark from the years of use. Each was organised by decade. Mara found her own birth year and her parents' marriage, both written in a clerk's careful handwriting. Then, between a list of fishing licenses and a record of harbour repairs, she discovered a thinner book with no title on its spine. Inside, in handwriting different from the other ledgers, was a list of names going back 200 years. The names are organised by year, not alphabetically, and next to about one name per decade was a single word, given. She didn't understand what it meant yet. She tried to believe it might be a record of donations, land given to the church, or something else ordinary, but 3 pages from the end, in ink that still looked fresh, she saw her mother's name, Eleanor Foss, given. There was no date next to it yet, just the name, waiting like a headstone carved before it is needed. Mara found her mother at the harbour before the sunset, kneeling at the seawall with the other women. Her mother's hands were raw from the rope, and her eyes stared past the horizon. When Mara called her name, her mother turned slowly, as if rising from deep water, and said, "You shouldn't have come back for this one." That night, the town elder, a She assumed, as the children do, that the woman was just tired or playing a part in the parade. She didn't think about it again until that night, when the procession's rhythm matched her memory exactly. The same cadence, the same hush, the same lantern swaying in steady hands. She asked Halstead carefully if the woman from that night, Constance Ames, whose name she now remembered, had ever come home. Halstead's face stayed the same, which was an answer in itself. Constance gave this town 30 good years before her name came up, he said. We don't forget the ones who's given. We remember them every Mending day. That's the whole point of remembering, so it never feels like it happened to a stranger. Once a generation, the sea took something back. Long ago, the town learned it was easier to choose what the sea took than to wait and see. The hoops in the seawall were not for nets, they were for names taken from a ledger older than the town's founding charter, written in handwriting no one could identify. It's not cruelty, Halstead said, looking away from her. It's arithmetic. One name every so many years to keep the town from drowning. Mara left Halstead's porch with the image of the ledger still burning in her mind and went straight to her mother's house. She was sure that if she could just get the car keys and 20 quiet minutes, none of this would matter. They could be on the highway before midnight, and the Mending day would become just a story she told badly for the rest of her life. Her mother was home this time, sitting at the kitchen table with a cold cup of tea. She listened to Mara's plan with such tired tenderness that Mara knew, even before her mother spoke, that the answer was already no. I tried that, her mother said, 31 years ago, when my name first could have come up. I packed a bag and got as far as the country line. She wrapped both hands around the cold cup. There's no gate, no one chasing you. The road is open the whole way, but I turn around at the line just like everyone does. Because by the time you get there, you've already learned something you didn't know before. That leaving doesn't make you any less a part of it. It just means that someone else has told her. We'll have to come back here one day and wonder why you left. Mara tried anyway. She took the keys from the hook by the door while her mother got ready for the ceremony. She made it to the driveway before she saw Halstead's truck idling at the end of the road, parked sideways. It wasn't blocking her path, just there, like a door held open but not locked. He didn't get out, he didn't have to, he just looked at her through the windshield with a patient, almost kind expression. Before she realised the town didn't need to stop her, it only needed her to understand, as her mother had at the country line, that this road didn't really lead anywhere. She laughed because it seemed absurd. Surely a town of 2,000 people couldn't have spent 2 centuries feeding someone to the Atlantic. No one else laughed. Only then did she notice the hardware store window behind Halstead, lined with photographs, decades of ordinary portraits, a quiet gallery of faces, each belonging to someone who had had their own bad Mending day. Mrs. Delory told her later, almost gently, as if sharing news of an illness, that her mother's name had come up at the reading 3 years ago. The town let her live those 3 years, just as before, same house, same job at the bakery, same seat at church, because the ledger only took effect on the next Mending day, that fell on a year ending with the same digit. Holloway Cove, it turned out, was not quick to be cruel. It was patient, letting you keep your ordinary life until the night it ended. The seawall ceremony began at midnight, lit by lanterns. The whole town stood in a loose crescent facing the water. sparing her neighbours the pain of forcing her. The last thing Mara heard clearly, before the town's voices rose into something between him and the tide, was her mother calmly telling her, like someone sharing a recipe, to stay through next year's mending day. No matter what, the town would need her help with the mending too, and it was easier, much easier, if you had already practiced believing it was just arithmetic. After that, the lanterns went out one by one, just as they always did. Mrs. Dillery would explain to Mara the next order, when it would finally be Mara's turn to kneel at the seawall. Fred wrote through a hope that wasn't for nets, and tell another visiting daughter that it wasn't cruelty, it was just arithmetic. I quite enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed the first story. It's very eerie, very mysterious. I think that's the best way to put mysterious, and I'll explain why the scene needs it, but there's always like a bit of a theme in that in horror with them not really, it's like under-explaining, which is really good and say it leaves a lot to the imagination. I can't really think of a theory. The only thing that ever comes to mind for me with stuff like this is very like Lovecraftian, with obviously like Cthulhu being the main one, or Shadow over Innsmouth and stuff like that. But yeah, quite a good story. On to the next. Just wanted to mention very quickly, after scouring the website a little bit more, most of these stories, if not all these stories, are written by the same author. So if you enjoy any of these stories and want to read something in a similar vein, I'd really recommend coming to the Horror Collection website. All the stories are written by Razvan, Radu. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that out very, very quickly before we carried on. So the next story we are going to be reading is titled My Parents Vanish Every Halloween. My parents vanish every Halloween. I don't mean they sneak off for a night of revelry or a brief escape. No, they disappear, completely gone as dusk fell, leaving me alone in the house. I'd look in the rooms, shouting their name, but they were nowhere to be found. As they never existed, we never discussed it. By dawn, they'd reappear, behaving as if everything was normal, as though it was just an ordinary night, but it wasn't. I knew it wasn't. I learned that through bitter experience. It started when I was 6. That first Halloween is carved in my mind. I was wearing my new witch costume, and I was thrilled for trick-or-treating, but as the sun dipped below the horizon, the house turned eerie, chilly, quiet, unnaturally still. I dashed through the corridor calling out for my mom or dad, but there was no answer. Fear seized me. I thought they might be hiding, playing a little Halloween trick. They loved horror Halloween stories, so I figured they were pulling a prank on me. But after what felt like hours of searching, I knew they were gone. The door was bolted, the windows latched, and I was entirely alone. That's when I found the first note. It was on the kitchen table, penned in my mother's familiar handwriting. It read, Rule 1. Stay in your room. Don't leave until morning. Ignore anything you hear. I didn't understand, frightened and confused. I didn't want to stay in my room. I wanted my parents. But something about the note forced me to comply. I grabbed a flashlight and a pillow, locked my bedroom door, and huddled underneath the covers. I wondered if it was some strange game. I wasn't certain. Sleep eluded me that night. The house moaned and creaked louder than usual. Odd noises filled the air. Faint scratches at my door, footsteps in the hallway, whispers too soft to make out. I told myself it was the wind or my mind playing tricks, but deep inside I knew better. Something was in the house with me. When morning arrived and I opened my door, my parents were back, seated at the kitchen table, drinking coffee as if nothing had happened. I asked where they'd been, what had taken place, but they just smiled and said it must have been a bad dream. That was the beginning. Every Halloween thereafter, the cycle repeated. My parents would disappear before nightfall, leaving a note behind each year. The instructions grew more specific, more ominous. By the time I was 8, the notes included Rule 2, don't look out the windows. Rule 3, don't respond if someone calls your name. And the noises, they grew worse. television, while other kids dressed and collected candy. I stayed locked in my room, listening to the house stir with unseen things. I grew accustomed to the notes, the eerie sounds, the sensation of being watched. It was my own haunted routine. But when I turned 13, everything shifted. That year, the note was different. I found it on my bed as the sun set, but instead of the usual rules, it read, "Something new is in the house tonight. Be cautious." I didn't know what it meant, but the words sent a shiver down my spine. Something new. What could that be? I locked my door as always and tried to settle in, but an overwhelming sense of dread gripped me. The noises began earlier than usual. At first, it was the familiar creaks and footsteps, which I'd grown used to, but then there was something else, breathing. Low, heavy, just outside my door. It wasn't human. Too slow, too deep. I pressed myself against the headboard, clutching my flashlight like a shield. Though I knew it was useless, the breathing faded, but then came scratching, not at the door, but inside my room. I swept the flashlight across the walls and the ceiling, but saw nothing. The scratching grew louder, nearer, until it seemed to come from under my bed. My heart raced, my throat dry with terror. I didn't dare look beneath the bed, too afraid of what I might see. The scratching stopped, replaced by a soft, childlike giggle that chilled me to the bone. It wasn't me, it wasn't my parents. Something was in the room with me. I backed against the wall, holding the flashlight out as if it could ward off whatever was there. The giggling continued, quiet, daunting. I whispered, "It's not real, it's just a game," but I no longer believed it. Suddenly, a loud bang shook the door, and the entire room trembled with the force of it. I dropped the flashlight, plunging into darkness. The breathing returned, now right outside the door. Bang! Another strike. The door quivered. Bang! The lock rattled. Whatever was out there was trying to get in. I scrambled for the flashlight, my shaking hands barely able to grasp it. The banging grew fiercer each hit, threatening to splinter the door. Then as abruptly as it began, it stopped. Silence. A heavy, oppressive silence. I held my breath, listening for any movement. Then the voice returned, soft and sweet, like the syrup. "Ellie, it's alright now. You can come out now." It was my mother's voice again, but I knew it wasn't her. I didn't respond, didn't move, just sat frozen, praying for dawn. The voice called again, more urgent. "Ellie, don't be afraid, it's just a game." My hands shook, barely holding the flashlight. The voice kept calling, but I stayed silent, clinging to the rules. Then something strange happened. The door began to unlock. I heard the soft click of the lock turning, the handle slowly twisting. "No," I whispered, pressing myself against the wall, willing the door to stay closed. But it was too late. The door creaked open, just a sliver, enough to reveal a shadow in the hallway, tall, thin, with limbs too long and fingers like claws. It wasn't my mother. The creature stood in the doorway, motionless, watching me. I felt his gaze, though I couldn't see his face. My heart pounded. I thought I might faint. Then the first rays of sunlight slipped through the window. The creature hissed, recoiling like a wounded animal, and vanished within seconds. The door slammed shut, and the house fell silent. I didn't leave my room until the sun was fully up. When I finally opened the door, the house was as it been, quiet, empty, untouched. My parents were back and sitting at the kitchen table, drinking coffee as always. I stumbled in, pale and shaken, and told them everything: the creature, the scratching, the voice that wasn't my mother's. They exchanged a glance. My dad chuckled softly. "You must have had a nightmare," he said, shaking his head. "Nothing like that happened, Ellie. It was just your imagination." My mom gave me the same odd smile imagination, but I would go with the parents turn into creatures every Halloween, some form of curse that haunts the family. Our third and final story, again by the same author, Razvan Radu, is called the 1986 Gobi Middle School Murders. Chapter 1, The Stool's Whisper. The third floor girls' bathroom at Gobi Middle School reeked of mildew, rust, and something fouler, a sickly sweet decay that clung to the back of the throat. It was November 12th, 1986, 6:03 p.m., and Michiko Yamada, 14, sat hunched in the third stall, her knees drawn tight against her chest, her oversized glasses fogged with each shaky breath, her brace trembling as she clutched her worn school bag. Michiko was no stranger to struggle. Her mother, a factory worker, scraped by to afford a uniform, and her classmates mocked her faded clothes. But Michiko was a fighter, small but fierce, her tongue sharp as a shield against their taunts. Tonight, though, she wasn't fighting peers, she was hiding from failure. Math tutoring had dragged on, her grades slipping like sand through her fingers, and the bathroom was a refuge from the tutor's disappointed sighs. The school hours were a different beast, though always alive with chatter during the day. Now lay silent, their shadows pooling like spilled ink. The air felt heavy, pressing against Michiko's skin, carrying a metallic tang like blood left to fester. Downstairs, a janitor's mop sloshed faintly. But up here, on the deserted third floor, it was just her and the flickering fluorescent lights, buzzing like dying flies. She stood, smoothing her skirt, and stepped towards the sink, her sneakers squeaking on the slicker tiles. The mirror showed a pale girl, eyes wide with exhaustion, her reflection distorted by a crack that split her face in two. As she turned on the tap, icy water stung her hands. She reached for a paper towel, her fingers brushing the dispenser, when a voice rasped from the fourth stall, the one kid's gold cursed. Shall we wear the red vest or the blue vest? The voice wasn't human, it gurgled, wet and deep, like a throat choking on its own blood. Michiko froze, her heart slamming against her ribs, loud enough to drown the force's drip, drip, drip. She spun, her breath catching. The three stalls gaped open, their doors swaying as if nudged by an unseen hand. But the fourth, its lock glowed red, engaged, and a shadow writhed behind the crack, too tall, too wrong. Red vest or blue vest, the voice hissed again, a sharper slicing into her mind. Who's there? Michiko snapped, her voice trembling but defiant. She faced bullies before, kids who shoved her, stole her lunch, but this was no prank. The air thickened, heavy with that coppery stench, now so strong it made her gag. She edged closer, her fist clenched, refusing to cower. Show yourself. The stall door creaked, inching open to reveal a void, pure black, swallowing the light. the blood puddle spread, lapping at her sneakers, its warmth seeping through the canvas. Her glasses fogged, completely blurring the bathroom into a haze of shadows and red. She remembered Arrow's nervous giggle, say a different colour, triggered. It was a desperate plan, but the alternative was answering Akomando's question. Also, quick side note, apologies if I'm butchering any of these names, I am trying. And she knew what that meant. Skin flayed, throat crushed, no way out. Green, she shouted. Her voice was raw. Green vest. Silence fell, heavy as a grave. Then, with a deafening bang, the stall door slammed shut. The lights blinked out, plunging the bathroom into darkness. So thick it felt like drowning. A howl tore through the silence, not wind, not human, but a scream of rage and hunger that clawed at her ears. Michiko stumbled, crashing into the sink, her glasses flying off and skittering across the floor. Her hands scrambled in the dark, brushing something wet, sticky, warm, like flesh peeled raw. The stench hit harder, rotting meat, iron, decay so thick it coated her tongue. She gagged, bile burning her throat, and fumbled for her bag, her fingers slipping in the slickness. The lights flickered back, dim and sickly yellow, revealing the horror. The fourth stall door hung open, and inside, no, something crouched. A figure in a tattered red cloak, its mask black, eyeless, dripping blood from jagged edges where it should have been. Its hands were claws, glistening with gore, clutching a green vest. Michiko's vest, torn from her back, now shredded and soaked red, chunks of flesh clinging to the fabric like maggots. Michiko screamed, her voice ripping her throat raw. The thing lurched forward, its cloak dragging through the blood, leaving smears like a butcher's floor. Flesh peeled from its arms in wet strips, exposing bone that gleamed sickly white. Its mask tilted as if sniffing her fear, and a gurgling laugh bubbled up, spraying blood across the tiles. Michiko scrambled back, her palms sliding in the gore, her sneakers squeaking as she kicked to stand. The thing's claws scraped closer, scritch, tearing gouges in the floor. She bolted, her shoulders slamming into the door. It gave way, and she tumbled into the hallway, the air cold and sharp against her sweat-soaked skin. Behind her, the bathroom door slammed shut with a boom, muffling a final guttural snarl. Green wasn't enough. Michiko ran, her breath sobbing, her glasses gone. The hallway a blur of lockers and shadows. She didn't stop until she reached the school's entrance, collapsing against the glass doors, her hands leaving bloody prints. Her vest was missing, her bag abandoned, and her mind screamed one truth. Akamando was real, and he had tasted her fear. Chapter 3. The School Bleeds. Morning broke over Kobe Middle School High, grey and heavy with rain. Michiko's desk sat empty. Her chair tipped over, her math notebook open to a page, smeared with frantic scribbles. By 9 a.m. the whispers started. Haru, Michiko's closest friend, pale and trembling, told their homeroom teacher, Miss Kato. She was in the bathroom last night. I heard her scream. Miss Kato, a nervous woman with a habit of twisting her rings, dismissed it. She's probably sick, she said, but her eyes pieces snapping together. Our commando wasn't just a ghost, it was a predator, tethered to the storm, feeding on flesh and fear. Chapter 4. The Claws Close In. By late November, Kobe Middle School was a husk. Parents whispered of curses, pulling students out in droves. The bathroom stayed boarded, but the horror bled outward. A teacher found a student's arm severed, gnawed. Behind a locker, blood trails vanishing into the walls. The stench